On day one, I was just admiring my amazing shiny Agrizard until I noticed that a wormhole had spawned right on top of my house. And when I went through the wormhole, I noticed that gravity was almost non-existent. Whoa! This place is crazy! The biome that I spawned in seemed to be some really dark, deep ocean, right next to an end dimension. I had never been in the ultra space dimension before, so this was all very new to me. And immediately, I found a really cool looking structure, so I went to go check it out. It turns out that it was a raid den where boss Pokemon spawn. So I decided to challenge it with my Agrizard, and I was able to destroy it in one shot. This place was so scary. There were creepy Pokemon flying around in the air, but I found these really cool crystal blocks in a lot of the structures, so I decided to collect them all. It turns out that these were actually crystal blocks, and you can use these to craft armor. And so that's exactly what I did. I crafted a full set of plasma armor. There weren't many benefits of it because in PIXELMON, you don't typically get into many fistfights, but just in case, it's better to be prepared. Anyway, I have some amazing goals for this next 100 days. Since my first 100 days, a ton of brand new fusion Pokemon have been released. One of them being probably the strongest in the game. You see, it's a fusion between the god of all Pokemon, Arceus, and the devil of all Pokemon, Giratina. That's right, there's a fusion that's called Arceus. So one of the main goals of this next 100 days is to attain that Pokemon. The Ultra Space Dimension is actually a perfect place to start as well, because there's a ton of loot here that will help me collect all of the Arceus plates. And eventually I had found my first Beast Ball loot, where I got a PP Max, which honestly isn't the best loot to get, but those Beast Ball loots are exactly what I'm looking for. I soon noticed that there was a Beast Ball in each of them, and I was getting some pretty cool loot from it. And after searching the Ultra Space Dimension for quite some time, I still had no luck finding any of these Arceus plates. And so I asked in chat what the best way to find them was. And a guy named Old Ethan said I could buy 4 of them from him for just $1,000. That is a deal that I could not pass up. So I TP'd him to me, he dropped the plates, and I sent him $1,000. Now that I had just collected 4 of the Arceus plates, I was feeling really confident getting some more. And eventually it happened. I claimed one of the Beast Ball loots and I got a splash plate. I was so excited because that was the first one that I actually found by myself. And that motivated me even more to go find them. So I continue looking and continue looking until I found another one, the Earth plate. And then I start to go on a little bit of a roll. I found another one, the Spooky plate. Now I wasn't getting all of these back to back to back. There was a whole bunch of other loot that I was getting in the meantime, but I had also just found the Flame plate. Then I found the Zap plate, and I was really feeling like I was on a roll now. I had collected 9 of the plates and got 0 duplicates so far. Then I found the Icicle plate, and finally I found a duplicate. I found a second Flame plate. The last one I found was a Metal plate, and I was getting pretty tired of this Ultra Space Dimension, so I decided to call it quits. And just as I was about to leave the Ultra Space Dimension, something crazy happened. I found a Pheromosa. This is an Ultra Beast Pokemon that is extremely powerful. You can only find the Ultra Beast in this dimension. I was able to get it into the red with my Terrakion and start throwing Ultra Balls at it. And after just 2 tries, I did it! I caught the Pheromosa. Now, even though Pheromosa is an extremely strong Pokemon, unfortunately, there are no fusions for it yet on the server. So even though I would love to use it, my plan is to sell it on the GTS to get some money to hopefully buy another Pokemon that can fuse. So then I decided to put Pheromosa on the GTS. I listed him for $30,000 and listed him up for an hour and a half. And if you guys remember from the first 100 days, I still had $97,000. So I decided to look at the GTS for myself, and I found a deal that I just could not pass up. There was a Beelesteela that was listed at $35,000, which is pretty ridiculously expensive, but I decided to buy it anyway, because Beelesteela is one of the rare Pokemon that has a fusion counterpart. All I would need to do is find a Beedrill. Yes, a Beedrill. The thing that evolves from Weedle. And so I ran to the nearest forest to go searching for maybe the strongest Pokemon of them all. They are extremely rare and challenging to find. They're definitely not common. at all. But hear me out. The fusion between Celesteela and Beedrill is actually insanely strong because the fusion itself gets the ability adaptability. And what that does is it takes stab moves and instead of increasing them by just 50%, it doubles the damage of them. So any steel or bug type move that I use with the Beelesteela fusion does double damage. And after just a couple minutes of searching, I found a level 6 Weedle. This little turd-looking Pokemon would eventually fuse with one of the strongest in the game. And just like that, we caught it. So I went straight to the training area and started getting him a bunch of levels. And after just the first fight, he got up to level 16 and evolved into a Kakuna. Then Kakuna evolved into Beedrill. Now that I had both of them, it was time to go to the fusion chamber to fuse the two Pokemon together. I put Celesteela on the left, Beedrill on the right, and clicked to confirm that I wanted the Beelesteela fusion. And just like that, I got him! There aren't too many super strong bug-type Pokemon in the game. Beelesteela is definitely one of the strongest, if not the strongest. Most of the Pokemon that I use are either Fairy-type or Dragon-type or Water, so I was actually extremely excited to use a bug-type Pokemon because I don't typically use them very often. So I went back to the training area and grinded some more levels for my Beelesteela. His last couple of levels, I gave him rare candies, and at level 100, he learned his signature move, Celestial Sting. It's a move that only does 55 damage, but it hits twice, so it pretty much does 110 damage. And because of his adaptability ability, that gets doubled, so it pretty much does 220 damage. In the first 100 days, I told you guys that if you typed in /warp siren, it would take you to this town to build whatever you guys wanted. And I never really got the chance to show it off to you guys. So here is the town that you guys built. I will admit some of it is, well, maybe not the best builds, but it is really nice to see our community building together. But anyway, the warp is still active. So if you guys do want to join this town and build your own home in the village, be sure to go ahead and join the Kyogre server and type in /warp siren to get to the town. In order to summon a Giratina, you have to capture all 3 of the Lake Guardians, Azelf, Mesprit, and Uxie, and they spawn in the river biome, which is pretty fortunate because my house is in a river biome. So my plan was to stick around my house for the next couple of days and see if I can get any of these bad boys to spawn. But not only do you have to catch all 3 of them, you have to get their happiness all the way up to maximum happiness, and then smack them in the face with the ruby. And after you do that, you can fuse the 3 rubies together to get a red chain. And after you get the red chain, you then have to find a Grisius orb, which I actually already have from the first 100 days. And then you just have to find a time-space altar. And that is how you spawn in Giratina. Now, I know that was a lot of explaining and probably got confusing at some points, but it's all going to start to make sense after we start finding these legendary Pokemon. And so I decided to take action. I got out my best team I possibly could, which was totally not a throw team at all, and decided to enter the War Zone. The War Zone is an area where a bunch of legendary Pokemon spawn, but if you engage in a battle with another player, the winner of the battle gets to steal a Pokemon from you, which is why I decided to get a full team of level 100 Pokemon that kind of stink, and I don't really care if I lose them. And then I found another player in the War Zone, which was very scary because there was no way I could possibly win a battle with this team. So I decided to run as far away from him as I possibly could. Luckily, he didn't seem to chase me at all, so I felt pretty safe and pretty much in the clear. Now, the War Zone does have different seasons, so every 2 months, the meta changes, meaning there's different tiers of Pokemon that you can use every 2 months, and right now it's set to OU, and fusions are not allowed this season. If fusions were allowed, I would totally just bring my entire team of fusion Pokemon, come in here and just shred everybody. But for now, since I can't bring my fusions into the War Zone, I kind of am forced to just bring these throw teams. I searched and searched and found a ton of random Pokemon that had spawned, but was still struggling to find the ones I was actually looking for. I only had 1 minute left in the War Zone and was getting kind of desperate, so I decided to walk up to to the other player, and it seemed like he was actually pretty friendly and didn't want to battle either. So together we waited around for some legendary Pokemon to spawn. And then his buddy joined, and he was wearing really scary armor and had a yellow glow to him, so I honestly thought that he was going to murder me. Luckily, he did not, but unluckily, I was running very, very low on time until eventually I did and got kicked out of the war zone. The next thing I decided to do was check the GTS once again, and what I found was amazing. There were tons of legendaries. There were 2 Palkias, 1 Registeel, a Magearna, but the one I was most interested in was the Suicune. You see, Suicune might not be the strongest individual legendary of them all, but he does have a fusion counterpart. So without much hesitation, I decided to purchase him. I went straight to my PC to get out my new Pokemon. He looked so cool, and I could even ride him as fast as I wanted. Although it was really cool to buy all of these amazing Pokemon, I was running really, really low on money. So I had to be very careful with my next purchases. Now, even though I had one half of this fusion, the other side was also not very easy to attain. You see, the other Pokemon also maybe is a legendary. Luckily though, it's not the most challenging one to get. All I would need is a legendary orb and an ice stone, because the Pokemon I needed was an Articuno. And because I play on a server, it's a little bit easier to find these items. I asked in chat if anybody had a spare one, and Rigsy said he did, but I didn't need all 3. Take 2 back. I paid Rigsy $1,000 for the orb and gave him a screenshot. Jeez! Thanks for the legendary orb, Rigsy. Okay, but now that I had the legendary orb, all I needed was this ice stone that I got from the first 100 days to combine them together, and that gave me the orb of frozen souls. And that is exactly what I need to spawn in Articuno. But it's not the last step. Now what I had to do is actually fill up the orb itself. And to do that, I had to eliminate 375 Pokemon. Each time I eliminated a Pokemon, it added its soul to the orb. And so I went straight to the boss tower and started destroying Pokemon one after another. The reason I went to the boss tower is because every time you eliminate a Pokemon here, you get some pretty good items. This was a great way not only to grind money, but to grind levels for your Pokemon and to get a whole bunch of random items. I was getting so many items from the boss tower that I had to go home and clear my inventory multiple times. And after a while of grinding, you could see that the orb was starting to fill up. And after a little while later, it happened. I filled up my orb completely, and it turned into a bright crystal blue, which now made it time to go to the shrine area to spawn in an Articuno. Before I battled the Articuno though, there was one last thing that I had to do, and that was to find a Pokemon that could paralyze it. So after running around a spruce biome a little while, I found a Pikachu. In fact, it was actually perfect because Pikachu had the ability Static, which means that any contact a Pokemon makes with it might cause that Pokemon to become paralyzed. Not only that, but Pikachu is also very fast and can learn the move Thunder Wave. So Pikachu's only usage would be to paralyze the Articuno. Then I decided it was time. I walked up to the shrine, admittedly pretty nervous, and right-clicked it with my orb. Immediately, Articuno spawned, and I had sent out Pikachu. I clicked the move Thunder Wave and missed, but it's okay because Pikachu lived the first turn and managed to paralyze the Articuno on the second. Then I switched into my Terrakion, and I didn't want to risk killing it at all, so I was just using Quick Attack to do some chip damage. I Quick Attacked a couple more times until it was in the red, then started throwing Ultra Balls. And after what felt like 1,000 Ultra Balls, I finally captured the legendary bird. Articuno was mine. I quickly rushed to get him into my party along with the Suicune. Then I raced to the fusion room and headed straight to the fusion machine. There I added Suicune to the left, Articuno to the right, put in my fusion key, and clicked to confirm that I wanted the fusion Pokemon, Suikuno. And just moments later, boom! There he was! Probably the most majestic bird you will ever see. Not only was it super cool looking, but it was also incredibly strong. It has the ability Ice Scale, which halves all damage damage taken from special attacking moves. And it's incredibly fast and hits really hard and is relatively tanky as well. But the best part is it gets a signature move at level 100 called Frostbitten Flurry, which does 100 damage, has 100% accuracy, and it even summons hail. If I could conjure up a team that benefits from hail, this Pokemon would certainly lead the charge. After I fused my Suikuno, I had a sudden urge to use it in battle. And to be honest, I had the same feeling for the Beelesteela. The problem was I wasn't entirely sure where to use my Pokemon. That is until I stumbled upon the Battle Tower. The Battle Tower is a tower with a bunch of floors with trainers on every single floor. The catch is you can only bring 3 Pokemon, and the trainers that you battle also only have 3. The more trainers you beat, the more battle points you get, and with those battle points, you can go to the battle shop to purchase a whole ton of items, such as rare candies, PP ups, power items. You can even get fusion shards and fusion cores, and non-legendary IV boosts, along with a ton of different TMs and all of the Z crystals. The problem was I didn't have a third Pokemon to challenge this battle tower with. Now, you might be thinking, Sirud, you have a whole ton of other fusion Pokemon. And yes, while that is true, and I totally could use them, I figured that since this is an entirely new 100 days, I should probably stick to using the Pokemon from this one. And so I set out to find another 2 Pokemon that had the ability to fuse together. I checked out the list of all of the fusions, and what I thought the easiest one to attain that I haven't yet is the Hydreisaur. That is because neither of the Pokemon required are legendaries, meaning I can actually just find them in the wild. And not too much later, I'd found one half, a Bulbasaur. And soon after, I caught it. I quickly warped to the training area, put a lucky egg on the Bulbasaur, and activated an XP all. And with all that being done, Bulbasaur was gaining levels like crazy. He evolved into an Ivysaur, then into a Venusaur. And after that, I set off to find a Hydreigon. And eventually, I found a Zweilous, which is the evolution right before Hydreigon. And then we caught him. I used the same strategy I did to level up the Venusaur with the Hydreigon. Except this time I went after Charizards because I could one-shot them really easily. And eventually, Zweilous leveled up to 64, which allowed him to evolve into the pseudo-legendary Hydreigon. And now that I had both of the fusion counterparts, it was time to go to the fusion chamber. I was so excited for this fusion in particular because I thought it was one of the coolest looking fusions of them all. And there he was, Hydreisaur. He looked so cool. He was pretty much a giant Venusaur with 3 heads. I was so excited to use him in battle. Hydreisaur has a special attack of a whopping 135 and gets a signature move at level 100 called Tri-Beam Cannon. It's a grass move that does 160 base power with 100% accuracy. However, every time it's used, Hydreisaur's attack and special attack drop by 1 stage. He's also a very tanky Pokemon and gets the ability Thick Fat, which boosts its resistance to fire and ice type moves. But now that I had 3 brand new fusion Pokemon, it was time to train them up and get them prepared for the battle tower. And so the next thing I did was warp to the Pokemart and go down a couple floors into the TM shop. Here is where I would buy moves for my Pokemon, like Scald, that I could put on Suikuno. And after I was done putting all the moves on my Pokemon, I went back to the training area and trained everyone up to level 100. And after a good bit of time, I was ready. Beelesteela ended up having Celestial Sting, Heavy Slam, Leech Seed, Protect. On the Hydreisaur, I ended up putting Tri-Beam Cannon, which is its signature move, and then I gave it Fire Blast, Draco Meteor, and Flash Cannon, which it all gets from Hydreigon. Then for Suikuno, I put Frostbitten Flurry, which is its signature move, combined with a Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, and Shadow Ball. Now my team is extremely offensive, but that is because these are all 3 versus 3. For the items, I ended up putting a Life Orb on the Beelesteela, Choice Specs on the Hydreisaur, and a Choice Scarf on the Suikuno. But with all that being said, it was time to challenge the tower. Now typically with the battle tower, you're not allowed to bring in any Pokemon that are over the Uber tier, which fusion Pokemon most certainly are. But let's just say I pulled some strings and was able to lift that rule. And so I added my 3 Pokemon, clicked confirm, and started the battle. The first matchup was against a Mamoswine, which I clicked clicked Heavy Slam against with my Beelesteela and destroyed it. Then he sent out a legendary Pokemon, a Kyurem, but it was almost no match for my Beelesteela as he destroyed it in 2 hits. And last but not least, this trainer had a Xurkitree, which again, I clicked Celestial Sting and killed it in 1 shot. 1 trainer down, a lot to go. And Beelesteela was not playing any game. He managed to get through the first couple of trainers on his own before finally going down to an Altaria, which Suikuno had 0 struggles with. The higher up the tower I climbed, the harder the competition went. And I soon realized that even though I had very strong fusion Pokemon, they were not invincible. And after a couple more trainers, it finally happened. I got taken out by about the 10th trainer. After my first attempt, I decided to regroup and rearm and bring in the demon himself, Dragon Ninja. Hydreisaur did great and there's nothing wrong with him, but I just feel like with Dragon Ninja on my side, I'll be able to destroy everything. And right away, Dragon Ninja was put to work destroying Pokemon. So after battling trainer after trainer after trainer, I kind of got bored and set myself a rule where I was not allowed to switch out Pokemon. And well, eventually that caught up to me and bit me in the butt when I ended up fighting a Blissey. And with my Beelesteela dead and only special attackers left, there really wasn't much else I could do, and I eventually took the L. But Dragon Ninja was absolutely insane, and he took my win streak from about 6 to 61. And as of now, I am in first place on the win streak leaderboard with 61 wins in a row. So for now, I am the best Battle Tower battler on the entire server. Let's go. I was about to go back to the war zone again to hunt for some more legendary Pokemon, but before I went, an epic boss Slowbro spawned. So I decided to take out Beelesteela and destroy him. This was actually extremely important because not only did I just get Slowbro's Mega Stone, but I also got my own Mega Ring as well. This meant that I can now Mega Evolve Pokemon, but I can only Mega Evolve the Pokemon that I have their relative Mega Stone for. So right now, I can only do Mega Slowbro, which between us isn't really that good. If you guys do want to see Mega forms of fusion Pokemon, that is totally something that I can do, but the only way I'll do it is if there's enough comments and support on this video to actually do that, because that will be a ton of work. And so the very next thing I decided to do was go straight to the war zone with my throw team, but this time I went with the Pikachu so that I can paralyze any Pokemon that I want to catch. And boy, I'm glad that I did, because almost instantly after joining the war zone, an Eternatus spawned right next to me. So immediately I engaged it in a battle and Pikachu got to work. After I got it into the red and paralyzed, I immediately started throwing Ultra Balls at him. And on the very first try, I caught him. And so I instantly got out of the war zone and threw out my brand new Pokemon, Eternatus. Let's go! This thing was so epic. At first, I wasn't entirely sure what I would do with this Pokemon, because in this series, I only wanted to use fusions. But then I remembered, it does get a fusion. And not just with any Pokemon, but the god of all Pokemon himself, Arceus, which is a Pokemon that I'd been trying to get earlier on in this 100 days. An Eternatus fused with an Arceus is not only going to look amazing, but surely it's going to be incredibly strong. And so my next goal was to go and capture an Arceus, but that would be a lot easier said than done. I was genuinely worried that after I spawned in the Arceus, I wouldn't be able to catch it, because that actually almost happened with the Articuno, and Arceus is most certainly harder to catch than that. So I didn't want to take any chances, and the only way to not take any chances in a Pokemon battle when you're trying to catch the other Pokemon is to have a Master Ball, which is an item that I didn't quite have yet. But that is when I discovered that the command /bingo is a thing. And if you complete one bingo, one of the rewards that you can get is a Master Ball. You can also get a Z Crystal, Arceus Plate, random battle item, and if you can complete the entire card, you get even better items. A rare crate, a Mega Stone crate, a Fusion Shard, Fusion Core, Z Crystal, or a legendary held item. But I will say that you only have 24 hours to complete the bingo or the card itself. But anyway, after analyzing the card, I picked out which row I thought was the easiest to catch, and I went with the bottom one. Litleo, Bidoof, Patrat, Spinarak, and Ice-Q. So I set off to go and catch all 5 of these Pokemon in the hopes that I would get a reward that would help me catch the Arceus. Arceus. The first Pokemon that I found on my bingo card was a Spinarak. I paralyzed it, threw a Pokeball at it, and not too long later, I caught it. Litleo is a pretty common Pokemon as well, so not too long later, I managed to find one of those. The next Pokemon I found was a Patrat. Then eventually I found an ice biome where I found the Ice Cube. And last but not least, I finally found the god of all Pokemon. No, not Arceus. But Bidoof, there he is! This is the last Pokemon that I need for my bingo. And after catching him, I received a Master Ball. Completing that bingo was actually a lot of fun, and it made me kind of want to try to complete the entire thing. But the thing is, I had much bigger fish to fry, such as catching the actual god of all Pokemon, Arceus. So I went home and grabbed all of the plates that I currently have, just to keep myself organized, and then continue looking for a wormhole spawn. And after a little while of searching, I finally found one. A wormhole to the Ultra Space Dimension. I've been in here quite a lot recently and have started to feel a little bit more comfortable, even though it did have a very gloomy ambience. And after searching Beast Ball after Beast Ball, I finally got lucky once again and got another plate that I needed. The Dread Plate. Finding all of these plates was taking an excruciating amount of time. While I was searching for more Beast Ball loot, I found a 4-star raid and decided to take it out. Unfortunately, it didn't give me any Arceus plates, but it did give me a Destiny Nut, an Everstone, and a Big Nugget. For some reason, though, I do feel like in 5-star raids, there is a chance that those Pokemon will drop Arceus plates. And after a long time of hunting, I finally found a 5-star den. It was a Superior. I got a ton of really good items from that, including another Arceus plate that fell on the ground. Luckily, I saw it because if I didn't, I would have just let it go. After getting a plate from a raid den, it kept my eyes peeled for other raid dens. But I was only battling ones that were 5 stars, and so I ended up leaving the majority of them. But what I did not leave the majority of are the Beast Ball loots. I was picking up every single Beast Ball loot that I could find, and by doing that, I had collected another plate that I needed, the Sky Plate. Eventually, I managed to collect 16 of the 17 Arceus plates until one last Beast Ball gave me the final one that I needed, the Fist Plate. After getting a countless amount of duplicate plates, I've collected every single Arceus plate in the game. But I was so excited. Now that I had every single Arceus plate, all I had to do was go to the Chalice at spawn. I wasn't really nervous at all in this 100 days until about, well, right now. I don't know why, but walking up to the Chalice made me extremely nervous. But even with all the nerves, I decided to continue onward and place in plate by plate into the Chalice until there was just one remaining, the Earth Plate. I double-checked my inventory to make sure that I had my Master Balls ready until I finally decided that it was time to add a last piece to the puzzle. In 3, 2, 1, and there we go! The Azure Flute popped out of it. The Azure Flute is used to summon Arceus. So with it, I right-clicked the Chalice and selected confirm. And there he was! An Arceus had just spawned. I took no risks at all and immediately chucked one of my Master Balls at it. And of course, without failure, the Pokeball captured. Arceus was mine. I was so excited. I had just caught the god of all Pokemon. This one felt a little bit different because I had to do so much work to get him to actually spawn in. Most other legendaries, you kind of just get lucky, but with a Pokemon like this, where you have to work for hours and hours to finally get him to spawn, it just feels a lot better. Part of me really wanted to keep Arceus as his regular Arceus form forever, but another part of me also really wanted to fuse him with the Eternatus immediately. Look at how amazing both of these Pokemon are, and immediately it seemed like they became best friends because they started kissing. Either way, it seemed like both Arceus and Eternatus were super accepting that they were about to be fused together. And so, that is exactly what I did. I warped to the fusion room and ran straight ahead to the fusion chamber, added Arceus on the left side, Eternatus on the right side, put in the fusion crate key, and clicked to confirm that I wanted to fuse the two together. One god Pokemon from another to create probably the strongest and most amazing Pokemon Pokemon of all time, Arceus. He was humongous. I was not expecting him to be this big, but he looked absolutely amazing. There was floating diamond particles around him, and the color palette, everything about him was just so amazing. Not only that, but he had a base stat total of 775. He probably has the most OP signature move at level 100 called Divine Depletion. It's a move that does 120 base power with 90% accuracy, and the user regains 40% of all of the damage dealt. I honestly don't know if there's any Pokemon that could possibly ever stop this guy. This Pokemon truly is the god of all Pokemon. Eventually, I trained him all the way up to level 100, where he finally learned that signature move, Divine Depletion. I went straight to the boss tower to test out how strong my new Arceus was. And what I found was that he was insanely strong. He was eliminating Pokemon in pretty much one shot with a move that wasn't even super effective. I kept climbing the tower to hopefully find some sort of challenge for Arceus. But the more Pokemon I fought, the more I realized there wasn't really anything that could stop him. That is until I made it to the final floor and I found myself. This was certainly unexpected. I seem to be a legendary boss trainer, and a challenge is kind of exactly what I was looking for. And so, of course, I decided to challenge him to a battle. He led off with the Spiritomb that was level 140, and although I had a full team of legendary Pokemon, this 40 level gap was going to make a huge difference in this battle. I decided to lead with my Agrizard and Gigaton Volcano the Spiritomb. This guaranteed that the Spiritomb would be burned, having his attack for the rest of the battle. And even still, that wasn't enough for my Agrizard to take the Spiritomb down. So then I went into my super speedy Dragon Ninja to finish the job, to which he switches into Lucario, and I try to counter that with my Suikuno. After Lucario used a close combat which lowered his defense, I went for a Frostbitten Flurry which did a ton of damage. Suikuno ended up going down, and I went back into Dragon Ninja to finish the job. Then he switched into Roserade, which was a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I wasn't entirely sure how to counter him, so I went to Beelesteela. Celestial Sting ended up doing a pretty good amount of damage actually, and was able to take him out. But then he had a fusion of his own, a Kyoleki, one of the fastest and hardest hitting fusion Pokemon of them all. So then I switched straight into Hydrausaur because I didn't think Kyoleki had anything that could really touch it. And I was right. I went for a Tri-Beam Cannon and I destroyed it in just one shot. Then he switched into Garchomp, and I really wanted to keep my Hydrausaur alive, so I switched into Beelesteela and let it die. Then I went back into my Dragon Ninja and used Draconic Kunai, which absolutely destroyed the Garchomp in one shot. His next Pokemon was Gastrodon, and I keep saying him as if it's not me, but really it's me, so it's a little bit weird. I'm not sure if I should say me or him or who, but either way, he is an imposter and do not trust him. Nonetheless, he had a Gastrodon, so of course I switched into my Grass-type Pokemon, because that was 4 times effective against it. I clicked Tri-Beam Cannon, and that destroyed him, and that was his last Pokemon, which meant I was victorious. And as I looked in chat, I realized that this wasn't just any trainer. This was a Dynamax keeper, meaning that if you beat him, you get a Dynamax band, which is exactly what I got. And so I equipped it instantly. Yo, that looks so cool. I decided to feed all of my Dynamax candies to my Arceus until it was the highest possible Dynamax level. Then I fed the rest of them to my Dragon Ninja because he's the glass cannon of the team and he's so cool. Now I have the ability to Dynamax any Pokemon that I want, including this Arceus. But if that is something that you guys would like to see, be sure to stay tuned for the next 100 days of Fusion Pokemon.